Glow broadband and TV is packed with even more value, as you get a free Samsung tablet, free installation, and 50% off your bill for 3 months when you sign up now. Yes, a free Samsung tablet. Power all you do at home with up to 100 megabits per second super fast broadband. Plus, stay HD entertained with Flow TV. Stream, share, and do more on your new free tablet, which will also keep you connected on the go with ease. Sign up at a Flow store today. Conditions apply.
You need a drink, have a Viva, Viva. You want some fun, get a Viva, Viva. Taste the flavor, have a Viva, Viva. Oh yeah, Viva is the one. Say goodbye to boring. Let me hear you sing. Got to have my Viva, whatever, so much better.
Viva sparkling flavored water. Water, but better.
Gift for Dad's birthday? Click. Ooh, Janice's retirement party? Click. Outfit for my girl's wedding? Click.
With TDC Airbox, you click, we ship. Register for your free U.S. mailbox today and shop all your favorite stores online. Enjoy the convenience. Free consolidation up to £10. Competitive rates. Free package tracking account with live notifications. Free delivery and, of course, excellent customer service. Visit our website at tdcairbox.com and register today. For more information, visit our offices at the C.A. Paul Industrial Site in St. Kitts and Penny's Industrial Site in Nevis. Follow us on social media at TDC Airbox. TDC Airbox. You click, we ship. Terms and conditions apply.
A pleasant good morning to radio listeners. Welcome to today's edition of Voices. Thank you for joining us, not just on radio, but also online on our YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as our website. I am your host, Kevon Brown, today, standing in for your favorite Voices host, Devon Cornelius, who is out today. Starting off the program today, we will be looking at the verdict that was made in the Derrick Chauvin case that was announced sometime after 5 yesterday afternoon, where the jury found Derrick Chauvin, the officer who was charged with murdering George Floyd, guilty on all 3 counts.
Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derrick Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1. Court File Number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, Juror Foreperson, Juror number 19. Same caption, verdict Count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by Jury Foreperson, Juror number 19. Same caption, verdict Count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury Foreperson 0.
So, as you heard, Derrick Chauvin was charged on the 3 counts, second-degree murder, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and a manslaughter charge. I think the minimum was around 35 years if you consider all three of the charges. So yesterday, April 20th, at around 5 o'clock, the news broke that the jury, after some 10 hours of deliberation, found the former police officer of the Minneapolis police, Derrick Chauvin, guilty on those 3 counts concerning the murder of George Floyd. The trial started on March 29th, as many of you who would have been paying attention would have noted. It started on March 29th, some 3 weeks ago, and it was expected to last a month, give or take. The prosecution claimed that Mr. Chauvin used excessive and deadly force. I'm sure many of you have seen the video, or at least heard of the video, heard some clips of the video, heard something of the video used where Officer Chauvin, former Officer Chauvin, used excessive and deadly force, and that was the prosecution's claim, and used 11 days of the trial to prove just that, calling a myriad of witnesses and experts to explain why former Officer Chauvin, his actions were considered excessive. Naturally, the people of Minneapolis were waiting with bated breath on this decision because it was a racially charged situation, because Derrick Chauvin was a Caucasian American and George Floyd was a Black American. And so there were certain racial implications where it has continually been reported that the American judicial system has been set up unfairly against specifically people in the minority, and specifically, even more specifically, people of the African American community. Now, after the verdict, there was, of course, several reports, and there was plenty of people outside of the trial who were very much excited at what happened at the guilty verdict. And we're going to have a listen to some of their reactions from outside the courtroom. Jury clip 3. Jury clip 3.
Derrick Chauvin being led out of the court in handcuffs and remanded in custody after he was found guilty on all 3 charges relating to the killing of George Floyd. So guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of third-degree murder, and guilty of second-degree manslaughter. Just to give you an idea, the second-degree murder on its own carries a penalty of up to 40 years in prison, and the judge announced that sentencing would occur in about 8 weeks from now. We're now showing pictures of the crowds gathered outside the courthouse in Minneapolis. Let's listen.
Keep trying to change the system of injustice to a natural
Well, scenes of joy there outside the court in Minneapolis. Supporters of George Floyd erupted with joy. Many there literally crying tears of joy when they heard that Derrick Chauvin has been found guilty on all 3 charges relating to the death of George Floyd. 2nd-degree murder, 3rd-degree murder, and 2nd-degree manslaughter. So many had gathered there, well, they had been there before, and then obviously as news reached us about an hour and a half ago that the jury had reached their verdict, and they did so incredibly quickly. They were only sequestered about 24 hours ago, so that the jury had reached the verdict, more and more people gathered outside the courthouse in Minneapolis. Well, let's go to Ronald Sullivan, professor of law and director of the Criminal Justice Institute at the Harvard Law School, joining us from Newton in Massachusetts. You have followed this trial with us. We were speaking just before the verdicts were announced. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm sensing that there is an incredible amount of relief in Minnesota that justice was served. And there's such a history, and we talked about it before during the last segment, such a history of Black and brown people not receiving just results in the criminal justice system. So this is an example that the justice system can work for Black and brown people across the country, and it's an important verdict. It's also an accurate verdict given the evidence that was put forward. What we saw was a case where the prosecution showed beyond a reasonable doubt that Derrick Chauvin caused the death of George Floyd by putting his knee on his neck for such an extended period of time. I do believe that the verdict was reached honestly, that it was reached genuinely and sincerely, and it was reached within the confines of the courtroom.
That was a report on the happenings outside the courtroom after the verdict was reached in the case against Derrick Chauvin in the murder of George Floyd. You heard the voices of the crowd completely ecstatic about the guilty verdict. And one of the interesting things that was being debated was the quickness with which the verdict was reached, because normally in criminal or murder trials, the jury is expected to deliberate for sometimes up to days. And a lot of the reports, the international reports, has described the 10 hours with which the jury came up to the verdict, those 10 hours as quick or short or expedient. But it just, in my opinion, it just shows that the jury, based on the evidence that was shown, understood the case enough, didn't have any questions. I think that was one of the things that was said in one of the international reports, that they didn't have any much questions to ask for clarification, and they came to the decision. I would love to hear from our listening audience how they feel about this verdict. Please call in. The numbers 466-0989 or 762-662-0989. I'd love to hear your opinions on the verdict, the guilty verdict of Derrick Chauvin. But before that, we will take a quick break and take a word from our sponsors.
Hey, Dad, want a race?
Well, let's see who's trying to keep up with who today.
Oh, 'cause you need a head start?
I'm already way ahead of you, son.
Keep up with what matters. Joint Care supplements your active lifestyle by supporting your bones, cartilage, muscles with essential nutrients. Joint Care helps to reduce inflammation with omega-3 and replenishes glucosamine, a natural compound vital to healthy cartilage and joints. Choose the Joint Care formula that is right for you. Supplex, Complete, and Max are available at your local pharmacy. Joint Care, a part of the 7 C's family of vitamins and supplements.
Flow Broadband and TV is packed with even more value as you get a free Samsung tablet, free installation, and 50% off your bill for 3 months when you sign up now. Yes, a free Samsung tablet. Power all you do at home with up to 100 megabits per second super fast broadband. Plus, stay HD entertained with Flow TV. Stream, share, and do more on your new free tablet, which will also keep you connected on the go with ease. Sign up at a Flow store today. Conditions apply.
Buying your medication is easy with City Drug Store's curbside pickup. WhatsApp our certified pharmacist at 662-8769 with your requests. For prescriptions, take a clear photograph and send for review. We will engage you in dialogue and then provide a quotation and link for payment. You can then pay via TDC's online payment portal. And once the transaction is complete, you'll be notified that your pickup is ready. Yes, it's that easy. Send your WhatsApp message to 662-8769 to order your medications today with City Drug Store's curbside pickup service.
Welcome back to Voices. Again, I am your host, Kevon Brown, and we are discussing the verdict of Derrick Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer who was accused and now convicted of killing George Floyd using excessive force. And one of the responses, President of the United States, Dr. Joe Biden, he issued a speech after the verdict was released, and one of the things he said was the conviction of a Chauvin in killing Floyd can be a giant step forward in the march towards justice in America. And I'm guessing in that vein, he is speaking about the systematic discourtesies, the systematic repression of minorities, people of color, black people specifically, in the judicial and policing systems. So we had that comment from Joe Biden. But going back to the actual specifics of the case itself, so the defense, their argument, we heard that the argument for the prosecution was that Chauvin used excessive and deadly force when handling the situation with Derrick Floyd. The defense, however, argued that he died from, allegedly, he died from drug use and ill health. During their presentation of last week, for a good part of last week, or the end of last week, closing arguments were on Monday, and then the jury deliberated yesterday for their 10 hours. Again, he was charged with second-degree murder, which means causing death without intent, and the maximum sentence for that is 40 years. As we heard, the sentencing for Chauvin is expected to happen in some 8 weeks. The second charge, third-degree murder, says it was a charge that was added onto the second-degree murder charge, and the maximum penalty for third-degree murder is 25 years. Now, in the actual event, Chauvin wasn't the only officer involved. There were 3 other officers involved in the situation. However, Chauvin was standing trial separately, considering he was the one who had his knee specifically on George Floyd's neck, which led to him dying. And the other reason was because of COVID-19 restrictions on the space in courtrooms. We know that COVID-19 has very much affected the regular ongoings of a lot of systems, specifically the judicial system, that had not been spared. The others were charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder, and they will go before the courts in August. Now, let's go back to last year, specifically on the events as they happened on May 21st. So in about 5 weeks would make a year since George Floyd was killed by Derrick Chauvin. So on May 25th is the day where George Floyd spent his last about 8 minutes and 46 seconds of life being held down with a knee on his neck. The Floyd was 46 years old at the time, and he was at a convenience store apparently buying cigarettes, and the convenience store employee called 911 alleging that George Floyd had paid for the cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. And that's when officers arrived on the scene. Derrick Chauvin, Thomas Lane, J. Alexander Kyung, and Tuo Tao. And in the harrowing video, the video still exists. For those of you who have the stomach for it, I don't recommend that, of course. Derrick Chauvin specifically, held his knee on Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and allegedly, within the video, I can't say for certain because I didn't watch the video. Unfortunately, I do not have the stomach for watching that 10-minute video. Floyd said around 20 times that he couldn't breathe.
Look how they doing people out here. Got him bleed on the ground. He crying and shit. That is sick.
Please. Please. Please, I can't breathe. Please, man. Please, somebody help me.
Well, you got him down, man. Let him breathe, at least, man.
I can't breathe.
I've been trying to help out. So you can breathe a little bit more. Put your hand on your neck, man. One of my homies died. You with the back phone.
I'm about to die, just say.
Relax.
Man, I can't breathe my face. Just get up.
What do you want?
I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. I can't breathe shit.
Bro, get in the car, man.
I will.
That was an excerpt from the 10-minute video in which captured Derrick Chauvin kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, in which he was exclaiming multiple times over and over that he couldn't breathe, And that lasted for 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes, in which Mr. Floyd spent the last moments of his life. The video itself is very gripping. The audio gives you chills, to be quite honest. And naturally, after that happened, it sparked protest action from the American community. It sparked a national and eventual global Black Lives Matter protests. And bearing in mind that all of this happened during a global pandemic. The following day, on the 26th of May, the 4 officers who were on the scene were fired, and the protests began. Some days after that, the former President Trump put out a tweet, as he's famous for doing. He loves putting out his tweets. He was tweeted as saying, "These thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let it happen." Just spoke to the governor of Minneapolis and told him the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty and we will assume control, but when the looting starts, the shooting starts. That was former President Donald Trump on the protest action being taken by the activists and protesters of the Black Lives Matter movement. On the 29th of May, Chauvin was charged with murder. Soon after, the looting, of course, began. Cities erupted, small businesses were attacked. Now, that's an unfortunate part of the whole protest action where looting occurs. That is one thing that I never understood, or in my opinion, I never got the purpose of looting as it pertains to protesting. You're protesting for a specific cause. Looting isn't necessary, but for some reason it comes as a natural progression with protesting, especially large protesting that erupts in the way that this protest action had erupted. It spread in more than 75 cities, and at least 4,000 people were arrested, and that's in the US alone. And that was before Trump threatened a military response, and soon after, in cities where the protests were heavy, the Coast Guard was sent out to, I guess, quell the erupting protests that were happening in the United States. On June 7th, so that's about a week, about 10 days, let's say, after George Floyd had died, international protests began. And that, I think, was a very poignant point during 2020. Even though we were in the height of a pandemic, globally there was protest action that was erupting where people from around the world were recounting their own experience of racial injustices. Brazil, France, Germany, in the UK, Black Lives Matter movement protests. Even here on St. Kitts, there was a silent walk that happened over at the Frigate Bay lawn in solidarity with the protest action that was happening in these states. So again, I would love to hear your thoughts on what happened with the verdict of Derrick Chauvin concerning the murder of George Floyd. Please call in. Our numbers are 466-0989, 762-0989, and 662-0989. We also welcome comments from our Facebook and YouTube feeds, comments and questions, any concerns that you may have. We'd love to hear from you. But before that, we'll take a break from our sponsors.
Broadband and TV is packed with even more value as you get a free Samsung tablet, free installation, and 50% off your bill for 3 months when you sign up now. Yes, a free Samsung tablet. Power all you do at home with up to 100 megabits per second super fast broadband. Plus, stay HD entertained with Flow TV. Stream, share, and do more on your new free tablet, which will also keep you connected on the go with ease. Sign up at a Flow store today. Conditions apply.
You a lot
Insurance Company Limited, where you get more coverage for less.
Welcome back to Voices. I'm your host, Kevon Brown, and again, we're talking about the verdict that came in yesterday afternoon in the case against Derrick Chauvin, who was charged and now convicted of second-degree, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter, each of which carry basically at least, I think an average would be around 30 years for the three of them. So based on the sentencing, which will not occur for another 8 weeks, Derrick Chauvin may spend the rest of his life in prison. He is 40 years old, essentially, and sentencing of, let's say, 40 years would carry him to 80. And if we go by the good book, around 80 is when he's expected to pass from this plane of existence. So it's basically any one of those three charges could basically be a life sentence, even if the minimum sentencing time is granted. The other three officers, they were charged for aiding and abetting second-degree murder, and their trials are expected to begin in August. So it'll be some time before their trials begin in earnest. If you, the listening audience, has any thoughts on the case, any thoughts on what happened after the case, any feelings whatsoever that you would love to share or that you feel is poignant or necessary to express as it relates to what this verdict could mean going forward. Some, for argument's sake, let's play devil's advocate, some pessimists might feel that this might not necessarily bring the amount of change that is purported. A change in judicial and police reform that limits the amount of profiling that happens within the black community, and the treatment of persons of color, specifically black people in America. However, people are, let's say, optimistic that this guilty verdict of this police officer is the jumping or driving force currently that would lead to possibly police reform, judiciary reform, as it pertains to policing and sensitizing police officers in how to deal with persons of color, as well as other minority groups that exist. So this trial hinges, this guilty verdict that came through, a lot was hinging on it coming through because people think that, or feel, or see it is a necessary driving force for getting the necessary police reform and judiciary reform to possibly curb the amount of shooting deaths of black persons in America. And while the trial was going on, there was another shooting death in Minnesota. I think the city is Brooklyn City, and the young man's name was Devontae. He was 20. He was shot and unfortunately died. He was pulled over at a stop sign by police officers, and he was shot and then subsequently drove off away from the police officers who were trying to apprehend him, and crashed and died from the gunshot wound he received. And soon after, that police officer was resigned from her position. Again, that was a situation where a Caucasian American police officer shot and killed a African American citizen. And that happened during the middle of the Derrick Chauvin trial, and that in and of itself sparked another week of protest action in Minneapolis that turned very much violent. And I think at some point it led to journalists who were trying to cover the event. They were very much apprehended. They weren't arrested. The journalists weren't arrested, luckily, but they were apprehended and ID'd as they were trying to cover the protest action that was happening because of the shooting of another young man, just a couple miles away from where Derrick Chauvin's trial was being heard. So very, 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 very hot climate occurring in the United States of America, and I'm imagining that it's resonating regionally and internationally, this verdict, what it would mean, what it could possibly mean as it pertains to reform, as it pertains to a community that felt that they weren't being heard or seen in a proper light. This verdict could mean that they could finally be seen, that there is some hope that what they have been purporting, what they have been saying, what they have been suggesting is true, that the judiciary system in the United States of America needs some reform to help curb the amount of violence that happens against the black community. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but if you do not have any thoughts, we would switch topics a bit to a more regional situation, closer to home, somewhat closer to home, relative to things anyway. We will switch to an update. Oh, we would have been switching to an update, but we have a caller. Caller, you're live on Voices. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I am doing okay. How about you?
I'm okay. I wasn't going to call us, but because when it comes to these things, I don't want to say that I have become insensitive, but for me, I just see the dial just keep rotating and rotating and rotating, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is not white people. The problem is not white people. I will say it here, the problem is us, what they call the black people. I think we're the ones who are living in naivety and ignorance. I think we're the ones who are rejecting knowledge. And until we wake up and see reality for what it is, and see who the enemy of our existence is, we will continue to die at the hands of those who were put there specifically for this purpose. Now, you see what just happened, I think, yesterday? With this guy, George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you something, right? I know a lot of people looking at it and saying, oh, hip hooray, charges have been met and whatsoever. As much as they try to get away with it, it was not easy because a video was there smacking your face. But I'm not surprised that they didn't try to pull that one over. And so some people think that there's a victory. But listen, let me tell you something. If you look at the charges, was any one of the charges first-degree murder?
No, they weren't.
There was no first-degree murder. So what does that say? You know what? It says that this guy practically will walk. So there is no victory right now. Wait for the sentencing. I do believe, just like the rest, he will walk. And if he goes into jail, as they call it, it will not be any jail. It will be like a resort. He will be pampered, treated with the highest respect among his people. You know, I mean, cheer and hip hip hooray, whatever. So he is not going to feel anything. And in terms of the looting, that has always been a question, right? But what has been found out at late, well, I mean, it's no surprise to me because I knew that was what was happening a long time. Many of these people who are among the black people, there are a lot of black people love to say, oh, they're marching with us and everybody is not like that. Some of those Europeans are sent there specifically for that purpose, to start fires and loot and everything. Maybe when some black people see that, who knows, I don't know, maybe they might join in, maybe they don't. But it is done specifically to put a brand on the black people. So it will make it, what I should say, more conducive for the military to come in on them. It's all a strategy. And I'm going to say something to those black people in America. When you are marching outside there and you say you have these white people who are marching with you, the time is going to come when they are going to withdraw. They're going to withdraw and they're going to leave you in the forefront. This thing, to me, I don't think it's going to end until a full-fledged war is waged against black people. They don't want them there, but they can't send them out because they were born there. Okay, they cannot deport them, and they don't want them there. And so what they have as the movie, The Purge, is the purging that they have. When the outright purge is yet to happen. What is going to save black people is the knowledge. And sad to say, we, among everybody else, we are the ones who reject knowledge. Hosea 4:6 says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge because they reject knowledge. That's therefore I have rejected you. It didn't say that there is an absence of information or knowledge, but it says we reject it because of our foolish ideas that we have on this earth about everybody. We must love them except to love ourselves. And I don't think we are open to reality. We are hoping against hope that this, should not happen, or it is not going to happen. And if we love them more, if we talk to them more, if we embrace them more, if we this more, and if we that more, and if we turn on ourselves, our own selves more, we are going to get acceptance. No, it's not going to happen. And I think for too long, we have allowed ourselves to remain in this sort of ignorance and mental slavery and bondage. And another thing, when black people remove themselves from under the grasp or the grip or the control of religion, they will never see who the enemy really is, because religion teaches us to love and love those who persecute, abuse us and everything, until we remove ourselves from under religion, because that's of the devil, that's the devil. And until we embrace spirituality, that's a relationship with our Creator, we will never see. And finally, before I go, the Bible itself says, and this is not a debate as to whether who believes or don't believe the Bible, because something about it is true. The Bible says that the God of this world has blinded the eyes and minds of God's people. And God's people, that means the Almighty, the Creator's people, those who He created, that they see and they perceive not. They read, yet they don't understand. And nobody else sits inside thee but us. I will stay here because I don't want to get other people upset. All right.
Thank you, caller, for your thoughts on the matter. You raised some very salient points, specifically as it relates to the looting situation. And I think one of the points that was brought up when it came to looting Some reports suggested that it wasn't the peaceful protesters that were looting, it was persons who just came clad in black, some reports said, clad in black and started the looting. And some analysis of that suggested that the looting was an effort to discredit the movement, to discredit it, to give, as was said, the police and the military forces permission to be a bit more forceful in getting the protests to stop. So that was one analysis that was brought forth previously as it relates to the Black Lives Matter protests. But before we continue, we'll take a short break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
When they start them there, we are top man, we take charge. Have no reaching now, we are shell down hard. Blast like a star with some gallop. Over no we take it too far. Take charge, take charge.
We are hot gal, we set the trend. Magnum we drink for the top man then. Wine with the style, no stop from spin. Hot blend, back bend, and take charge, take charge.
Magnum tonic wine, for the real star them. Take charge, take charge. Must be 18 or older, drink responsibly.
Enjoy the green life with TDC Home and Building Depots. Purchase select eco-friendly products and get 20% in savings. Celebrate Earth Week with us from the 19th through the 24th. Shop in store with your green bag or online and get even more green savings. This April, live green. Think TDC Home and Building Depots. Terms and conditions apply. Offer good while stocks last. See stores for details.
Flow Broadband and TV is packed with even more value as you get a free Samsung tablet, free installation, and 50% off your bill for 3 months when you sign up now. Yes, a free Samsung tablet. Power all you do at home with up to 100 megabits per second super fast broadband. Plus, stay HD entertained with Flow TV. Stream, share, and do more on your new free tablet, which will also keep you connected on the go with ease. Sign up at a Flow store today. Conditions apply.
And welcome back to Voices. I'm your host, Kevon Brown, and we are speaking about the verdict that came in for the Derrick Chauvin case. He was charged and now convicted with murdering, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter as it relates to him killing George Floyd. And before we went on a break, the caller also spoke about one of the views that I'm sure many people have, which is the inverse of the view that I expressed earlier, that even though he was found guilty of these 3 counts and may spend the rest of his life in prison, they feel that this actually won't change anything. Unlike what President Biden said, this is not going to necessarily account for a march towards change. Another pessimistic view might have been this guilty verdict was to quell the protest, to quell any riling up that persons might have had, considering if a not guilty verdict might have come back. We could assume that more protests would have erupted, considering people were already up in arms about the 20-year-old who died a week prior. So the caller also mentioned that she believes that Chauvin will walk. I'm not so sure about how likely that may be, but who knows? It's 2020, it's 2021. The 20s have been a period of just unpredictability. But she also mentioned that even if he does go to prison, he might end up living comfortably. I guess it depends on the type of prison he goes to, because if he goes to any prison in which he sent anyone to prison, it might not be as comfortable as we think it might be. But again, we would love to hear from our listeners on what they think about the verdict. Again, the call-in numbers are 466-0989, 762-0989, or 662-0989 to get your opinions on the Derrick Chauvin situation and his guilty verdict. Another point that was raised from the caller was this not ending or eventually coming to a culmination for actual change would be through a civil war. She suggested that the mass of the American population believes that black people specifically do not belong in America, even though they were born there. But truth be told, most Caucasians don't belong in America either, because they conquered the land, mass genocide of the native inhabitants of the Americas to take over. So if they can make that argument can be made that they don't belong there either, even though they were born there. But she suggested that any real change will only come through a civil war. Now, in a civil war, it's either the side that wants certain people out win, or the people that believe they belong rightfully, black people specifically, belong in America rightfully, because that is where they were born, that is where their lineage lies. Most of America was made on the backs of black people, as many historians and people within the black heritage have explained. America was built on the backs of slaves, so black people believe that they belong in America. Civil war would indeed bring change. However, the after effects of that change, what that change would actually mean after it happens, if it does happen in that way, it's a very ticklish issue to speak on, a very, very ticklish issue to speak on. If you have any thoughts, please call in and let us know what those thoughts in before we take our break before the headline news today at 12. But when we come back, we will be speaking about the situation that's been constantly occurring since April 9th on St. Vincent, concerning the La Soufrière volcano, and updates on the explosive eruptions that began that time, and what some of the efforts have been in providing aid, not just in supplies, but financial aid on a regional and global level to help the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We will come back to speak about those things. But concerning my final thoughts on the Chauvin situation, it would be optimistic to believe that his verdict, Derrick Chauvin's guilty verdict on those 3 counts, would bring about the necessary change in the judicial system in America. However, the pessimist in me is of the opinion that that change is still very far off. There are plenty of politicians that may actually use this guilty verdict as precedent to, or as some evidence that reform and change is actually need, or they may use this guilty verdict to prove that the judicial system is working just fine, because they did find Derrick Chauvin guilty of second-degree murder and manslaughter. The inverse can be said again, that the judicial system is working fine on a larger level. Just certain policies on a local level might need to be changed in order to sensitize persons in handling people of color and black people. There are many variables in this entire endeavor, and I don't believe it's as black and white as people are making it, as if this case was the straw, the final straw, or the final nail in the coffin that signifies, hey, this needs to happen and it needs to happen now. It's still going to be an extremely slow process. So I consider this guilty verdict a win, but a win in seeking justice for the death of George Floyd, and not necessarily a win in being the Kickstarter for what would have to be a national judicial reform as it relates to the unfairness of profiling and the unfair treatment of black people's interactions with the police. One of the most recent, well, it's not recent because it happened in December, but it wasn't featured in the media much, but it was featured in the media recently, I guess because of the Derrick Chauvin trial, as well as the 20-year-old who was killed by the police in Minnesota. There was an Army officer, a black Army officer, who was driving a vehicle, reportedly a new vehicle that belonged to him in December, with temporary licenses, that was stopped by police. And he was tased unnecessarily and profusely in his face, if you see the video. But we do have a caller, and caller, you'll have to be very quick. You have 2 minutes to midday. You're live. Good morning. Hello, caller. Hello, good day. Caller, you're live on Voices. Well, it seems we have lost that caller. But as I was saying, that he was an Army officer in Army uniform and was still, in my opinion, based on seeing the video, extremely mistreated. His hands, 2 hands, were outside of the window. They asked him to show hands. His hands were outside of his car window, dangling outside of his car window. Obviously, he's not doing anything. And with his 2 hands out of the window, he was sprayed multiple times, excessively, with pepper spray. He was putting up no resistance. He was complying, and yet he was profusely pepper sprayed. Now, why would that treatment be necessary? And what made it even worse is the fact that he was literally in military uniform. He was in military uniform, complying with what they were saying, and yet the officer found it necessary to spray him about 4 times directly in his face with pepper spray. I don't necessarily think that the Derrick Chauvin guilty verdict will change all of this on a national level one time. It's not going to happen. It's going to take a very, very long time before any actual real change happens in that regard. But we are just about at 12 o'clock, and we will take a break for the headline news, and we'll be back in a half hour with more Voices. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned.
Found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.
We now bring you the headline news. The headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, The Grange, KDP Enterprises, Carib Brewery, and Development Bank.
shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Everyone struggles at times. Even we too have our own struggles. Do you have a loan at the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis and have fallen behind on your payments because of financial difficulties? Have your financial situation changed? If your answer is yes, visit the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis or call 465-2288, extension 1101 or 469-5416 to make an appointment to discuss our debt evaluation and restructuring plan with one of our qualified officers. We are committed to working with you to make a sustained positive difference in your life.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
We are faced with tough decisions every day, but choosing the right home or motor insurance shouldn't be one. You need fast claim settlement from a company that's been rooted for over 31 years. And don't forget the A Excellent rating by AM Best. Make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Reliable insurance that you can count on. Get a quote today for your home, motor, contents, and liability insurance needs, and make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance. Tomorrow secured. Local agents, Dalil Walwyn & Co. Limited. Telephone 465-2631 or 469-5303 for the Nevis office.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Ron Collins, said the promotion and improvement of agriculture is a top priority for the government as it seeks to reboot the economy. He explained how the EC $10 million stimulus package assisted the sector.
A stimulus package of some $10 million has helped farmers and fishers to get back on their feet and to reboot this economy and the sectors. Government boosted support for the fisheries sector through the COVID-19 relief program and ensured the livelihood of many. And we even saw increase in the number of persons joining both the agricultural in terms of crop and livestock and the fisheries sector. The stimulus money received from government was also put to work in order to enhance the nation's ability to weather the ongoing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The rollout of the stimulus package was strategically implemented to provide well-needed support to our farmers and our fishers.
He also spoke to the issue of land reform and new investments in agriculture.
We are addressing the many irregularities with our land to correct the several anomalies that currently exist. I want to encourage persons to be faithful to their land rental fees as far as possible. The stimulus package of 2020 was indeed a tremendous boost for us, and is allow us to pivot into this new era of transformation. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis has invested this year over 15 million, in fact, $15,845,890 for the development of agriculture for 2021.
He reported on the issues facing farmers this year, including pest control.
We do have still the challenge with damage to crops, particularly by monkeys and pigs, and these animals have caused significant yield loss. But we have risen to the challenge. We have responded with training of farmers and trappers, the construction of trapping devices. Currently, we have traps under construction for both backyard farmers and regular farmers. We have invested heavily in several methods to curb the problem. The ministry has invested in two main areas of prevention. We have just received a supply of solar panel fence, and these will be distributed to our farmers. One of the areas which have been troubling has been dog bites, attacks by dogs, and we have seen a dramatic increase in the first quarter. So the department will be addressing this problem to help farmers reduce this loss, which is currently being experienced. So far for the quarter, we have removed some 214 animals, which monkeys and pigs, from farms that have caused damage.
Mr. Collins also reported on the sector's performance in the first quarter of 2021.
Crop production during the first quarter, cabbage production has increased by 1,050%. There has been a significant increase in tomato production by 59%. Cantaloupe production has increased by 400%. There are some crops that have fell in output, decline in pumpkin production, and that was mainly due to fungal infection. Carrot seeds were unavailable due to the supply restraints that have lingered from the impact of COVID, but this is currently being addressed. Sweet potato, watermelon, and yam saw a notable increase of 38.7%. And Dr. Challenger will speak to the livestock, but in terms of the production, beef production has increased by 70%, goat production increased by 112% in this quarter, mutton production increased by 16%, and pork increased by 70%. Overall, we see an increase of 67% over the same period in 2020.
Permanent Secretary Ron Collins is speaking on Tuesday evening's Leadership Matters.
We here in St. Kitts and Nevis, to the Department of Sport, have received a bid package from Cricket West Indies to host group matches or practice matches, as the case may be, for the Under-19 Cricket World Cup, which will be hosted here in the West Indies next year, 2022.
Sports Minister General Powell announcing that St. Kitts and Nevis is invited to bid to host matches in the International Cricket Council's World Cup in 2022. St. Kitts and Nevis successfully hosted matches in the 2007 ICC World Cup and has hosted several international matches since then.
As we prepare our bid, there are a number of things that are taken into consideration based on the actual bid package, which includes a requisite number of hotel rooms. There's a minimum, which obviously we believe that we would have available come next year when the tournament comes around. And basically it is minimum requirements in respect of hosting the teams and the logistics required, all of which we more than have capacity to do. We've done in the past, and we will be fully ready to have available come that time.
Mr. Powell also confirmed that St. Kitts and Nevis will be hosting one-day international matches in July this year.
To date, St. Kitts has been awarded 3 one-day internationals in upcoming Cricket West Indies tours in July of this year.
Journalist German Abel asked the minister about options for hosting CPL matches this year.
We have been in communications with CPL in terms of hosting the 2021 tournament, yes, and we hope to be able to confirm one way or another where we stand in short order.
Okay, so are we bidding for the entire tournament or are we bidding for the finals? And seeing that it's COVID-19, that would be the entire tournament?
Well, there are a number of options on the table. The best option for CPL is for the entire tournament to be held in one location, in one venue. But there are a number of issues that come with that. And so we are looking to see what options we have and to see if we're in a position to do it.
Canadian biotech company conducts vaccine trials in collaboration with St. Kitts Biomedical Research. Entos Pharmaceutical Incorporated, a Canadian biotechnology company, announced the first human dosing of its COVID-19 DNA vaccine candidate, Covigenix VAX-001, on April 15th in Phase 1 of 2 clinical trials. The trials were initiated after successful primate immunological studies were conducted without live virus by Versio Inc. at the St. Kitts Biomedical Research Foundation, according to a press release sent to WIN by the St. Kitts Biomedical Research Foundation. Quote, 72 healthy volunteers will be enrolled in the study to confirm the Phase 1 objective of vaccine safety before advancing to Phase 2 to evaluate the efficacy, the release stated. The Entos Covigenix VAX-001 DNA vaccine is said to be similar in function to the globally approved mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. Both give instructions to cells in the body to produce the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein and stimulate effective immunity against COVID. As DNA is inherently more stable than mRNA, Covigenix VAX-001 is stable at refrigerated and room temperatures for a longer time. Temperature stability is a critical property that simplifies the mass production and distribution of Covigenix VAX-001 compared to current vaccines. Entos' core technology, the Fusogenix platform, also allows for rapid redesigning of vaccine candidates with new DNA sequences to protect against emerging SARS-CoV-2 variants. Both qualities hold great promise in the global fight against the pandemic, Entos said. The Canadian company offered high praise for the facilities in the St. Kitts Biomedical Research Foundation. Quote, access to extensive primate research capabilities and scientific expertise at Versio and the St. Kitts Biomedical Research Foundation were important drivers to Entos' pursuit of their development program at the facility. These strengths uniquely position St. Kitts and Nevis to contribute to further important vaccine advances and biomedical innovation.
Director General of the OECS, Dr. Didicus Jules, speaking at Tuesday's launch of the UN Global Relief Fund that aims to raise more than US $29 million, pledged the support of the regional body and outlined the objectives of the OECS Stronger Together initiative.
Is designed to achieve several critical objectives in response to the humanitarian situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The first is to execute the decisions of the OECS authority in relation to an OECS-wide response to this situation. The second is to provide as much diplomatic, material, and financial support needed by the principal disaster response agencies managing this crisis, and that is SEDIMA, the seismic unit of the University of the West Indies, the Regional Security System, and CAFA. And it is important that we not overlook the importance of CAFA in this compounded situation of volcanic eruption in a time of COVID. To establish also a coalition of private sector philanthropic foundations and other sources of financial, material, and technical assistance to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and in so doing, to bring to this circle of solidarity new sources of support that may not have been previously available.
He announced that the coalition has over 100 agencies.
This coalition has already been established with 150 agencies and has had prior experience led by the Global Leadership Forum, Nigel Salina. have had previous experiences in dealing with hurricane situations in Louisiana with Katrina, in Dominica with Maria, and with Dorian in the Bahamas. The work of the coalition is being overseen in this instance by an advisory board that we have established for the purposes of transparency and accountability, that is being chaired by the Right Honorable Sir Dennis Byron, former president of the CCJ, and comprising also a senior political representative of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the person of Minister of Finance, the Honorable Camilo Gonzalez. All assistance mobilized is being channeled to support the lead agencies in this disaster and to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
He said since the launch of the OECS Stronger Together campaign, the response has been encouraging and aligned to the objectives of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Dr. Jules also mentioned an Ash for Cash initiative that's under consideration.
We also have the opportunity of turning ash to cash. And in discussions held with the government of Norway, who have been very responsive, they have pointed us to an experience in the Pacific where ash together with recycled plastic is being used to create bricks for construction. So we think that we are exploring this and in active discussions with them on moving into St. Vincent with the possibility, as well as we've invited the government of Barbados, who have been seriously collaterally impacted by the eruption, to be part of this initiative of moving ash to cash. Prime Minister Gonzalez also spoke to the critical need for the continuity of learning. And I'm happy to announce that in working with one of the coalition partners, within less than 4 days, we have now configured, and we are going to test this out in this coming week, a school in a mobile phone app that will enable all of the learning to happen in the centers, the shelters, and at homes to enable this to happen.
In today's roundup, we begin with the help of SVG News by highlighting one of the communities devastated by the La Soufrière volcano.
A bleak picture of the situation in Oyo, which is one of the communities in the red zone on the windward side of the island, devastated by the eruption of La Soufrière volcano. The owner of the dog returned to the community for the first time on Sunday since the eruption started, and when it was time to leave, the dog jumped into the water and swam towards the boat.
Yeah, taking it down, The dog just can't take the pressure up. Just can't take the pressure. Look, the dog jump past it.
There is total destructive transformation of Oyo, with a number of buildings destroyed, including churches, and the entire village covered with several inches of volcanic ash. New beaches were also formed, and a new waterfall developed from the destruction of the main bridge connecting Fancy to Oyo. The riverbed of the Oyo Big River has been totally transformed, with these huge boulders coming from the mountain slope. Dale Medica, who stayed behind, heard when it all happened.
It was like over about 1,000 yards away. I heard the rumbling, but I didn't make it here because rain was coming. Yeah, this is a new riverfall in Oyo. This was born on the 13th of April 2001.
Some areas in the community reeked of the scent of dead animals. This elderly resident, Grafton Caesar, is one of the men who did not evacuate. He said although they were able to save some animals, they could not save all.
When the river come down, sheep and goat and pigs washing to, when you watch goat and sheep inside the water, down in seawater right there, just like a waft down the real sheep and goat and dogs, because they have no shelter place to shelter. So in the river, they have cave with the animal to go and shelter, but they don't know because they don't have the opportunity like we human beings. So river take them and carry them away.
Another resident known as Jumbi said at this time Oyo is inhabitable as there is a constant sandstorm. He said it will take a long time before Oyo returns to anything close to normal.
When you look at it, like it's a desert, and we say you have to be good for living in a desert. The situation here we're going on now is a famine thing going on, you know. And the people them cannot come back in this village here for now because up at the water situation, real bad, real difficult now to put back pipe. Have to run real years before. Well, me say plenty years, but it could take a time.
Due to the weight of volcanic ash, which has formed like cement, some roofs are caving in. The remaining Oyo residents and those who have been watching videos and pictures of their houses from a distance are praying for rain to keep the dust down and wash away the dirt off their houses and crops, which for many are their livelihood. For SVG TV News, Larissa Pugsley-Kidd.
The plight of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been relayed to the United Nations by the country's head of government, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. In an address to the UN on Monday, Prime Minister Gonsalves said boldly that the global community was being summoned to action to aid his volcano-battered nation. He argued that this should be done in the name of humanity and in accord with the United Nations Charter. The way Dr. Gonsalves described the situation, that for 11 days by Monday, St. Vincent and the Grenadines had been in the throes of a series of explosive volcanic eruptions.
As a consequence, nearly 1/5 of the island's population has had to be evacuated to safer areas. The monumental challenge of humanitarian relief, including security considerations, and recovery and reconstruction face us. Without effective cooperation between our country, the United Nations, and our regional, sub-regional organizations, our life and living would be wholly unbearable. Without an enhancement of this cooperation, the relief effort would be stymied, and the prospects for our recovery and reconstruction would be dismal. The United Nations and its agencies have been actively at work, and the personal leadership of my friend, the Secretary General, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, has been outstanding. The Caribbean Community, CARICOM, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the Regional Security System, the ALBA, the Association of Caribbean States, and their allied regional agencies have been at the forefront with their magnificent efforts. Still, much more is required to be done. Across our land, the faces of men and women are strained and anxious. They are hurting badly. The global community is being summoned to action to our aid in the name of humanity and in accord with the United Nations Charter. And the global community cannot allow itself to make haste slowly.
Vincentian Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves.
It's Wednesday, April 21st, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. The Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners is on board with plans for visitors who have been vaccinated against COVID-19 to be fully quarantined if they pass through countries where COVID-19 variants are prevalent. The support comes on the heels of confirmation by Trinidadian health authorities that the highly transmissible Brazilian strain of COVID-19 had been detected there. It also comes ahead of Barbados's implementation of new protocols for visitors on May 8th.
From May the 8th, right, when the new travel protocols come into effect, if somebody passes through a country with variants of concern, that they would be made to quarantine, even if they're fully vaccinated, they would be made to quarantine for the full time if they've passed through a country with variants of concern. So that's the measure that we have instituted in the new travel protocols to deal with people who are coming from areas where variants of concern are prevalent. And so it says that there will be a list on the BGMI website which is updated frequently as to what countries those are that we're concerned about. And if you come from one of those countries, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, positive, you would be made to quarantine when you arrive.
That was BAMP President Dr. Linda Williams, who also reiterated calls for variant testing to be done in Barbados as other countries in the region.
I have made my concerns widely known about variants and the need for variant testing in Barbados. How important it is, how important it is to our tourism product, especially to know about variants of concern. And now with the Indian variant, we don't really know much about that, but it's in the UK, and if it's in the UK, it can potentially be here. Okay? We don't know if, how much protection the vaccines give. We don't know. There's so many unknowns. Plus, some tourism markets are saying that unless we are doing variant testing, that, they wouldn't really want their people to come to us. And that's because, of course, a variant can develop anywhere. It can develop the Barbados variant. And it behoves us to know what is happening here on the ground as well. Now, we've been sending some to Carpa. I don't think the second set, the results of those have been announced. But, whether or not we're sending them to Perth on a regular basis, I am not sure. The fact of the matter is that we have to use all the resources we have as a country to get this done.
U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland is announcing a civil investigation into policing in Minneapolis. The announcement comes hours after former police officer Derrick Chauvin was found guilty on Tuesday of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter of George Floyd. Floyd died last May after Officer Chauvin put his knee on his neck for more than 9 minutes as Floyd lay on his stomach with his hands shackled. Video footage showed Floyd appeal, "I can't breathe," and cries from bystanders were also ignored by Chauvin, who kept his weight firmly on Floyd's neck.
I know that nothing can fill the void that the loved ones of George Floyd have felt since his death. My heart goes out to them and to all those who have experienced similar loss. I know such wounds have deep roots, and that too many communities have experienced those wounds firsthand. Yesterday's verdict in the state criminal trial does not address potentially systemic policing issues in Minneapolis. Today, I am announcing that the Justice Department has opened a civil investigation to determine whether the Minneapolis Police Department engages in a pattern or practice of unconstitutional or unlawful policing. This effort will be staffed by experienced attorneys and other personnel from the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Minnesota. The new civil investigation is separate from and independent of the federal criminal investigation into the death of George Floyd that the Justice Department has previously announced. Congress gave the department the authority to conduct civil practice, pattern or practice investigations, which look beyond individual incidents to assess systemic failures. Those investigations allow the department to determine whether a police department has a pattern or practice of unconstitutional or unlawful policing. The investigation I am announcing today will assess whether the Minneapolis Police Department engages in a pattern or practice of using excessive force, including during protests. The investigation will also assess whether the MPD engages in discriminatory conduct and whether its treatment of those with behavioral health disabilities is unlawful. It will include a comprehensive review of the Minneapolis Police Department's policies, training, supervision, and use of force investigations. It will assess the effectiveness of the MPD's current systems of accountability and whether other mechanisms are needed to ensure constitutional and lawful policing. Broad participation in this investigation from the community and from law enforcement will be vital to its success. The Justice Department has already begun to reach out to community groups and members of the public to learn about their experiences with the MPD. We also seek to hear from the department's officers about the training and support they receive because their perspective is essential. All these voices will help provide investigators the information they need to conduct a comprehensive assessment. All these voices will be critical to the reform efforts that will follow if the investigation determines the existence of constitutional or statutory violations. If the Justice Department concludes that there is reasonable cause to believe there is a pattern or practice of unconstitutional or unlawful policing, we will issue a public report of our conclusions. The Justice Department also has the authority to bring a civil lawsuit asking a federal court to provide injunctive relief that orders the MPD to change its policies and practices to avoid further violations. Usually when the Justice Department finds unlawful practices or patterns of practices, the local police department enters into a settlement agreement or a consent decree to ensure that prompt and effective action is taken to align policing practices with the law. Most of our nation's law enforcement officers do their difficult jobs honorably and lawfully. I strongly believe that good officers do not want to work in systems that allow bad practices. Good officers welcome accountability because accountability is an essential part of building trust with the community, and public safety requires public trust. I have been involved in the legal system in one way or another for most of my adult life. I know that justice is sometimes slow, sometimes elusive, and sometimes never comes. The Department of Justice will be unwavering in its pursuit of equal justice under law. The challenges we face are deeply woven into our history. They did not arise today or last year. Building trust between community and law enforcement will take time and effort by all of us. But we undertake this task with determination and urgency, knowing that change cannot wait.
Live from NPR News, I'm Corva Coleman. A Minnesota judge will sentence Derrick Chauvin during June after Chauvin was convicted yesterday of murdering George Floyd. There were celebrations in Minneapolis and other cities and towns after the news was announced. President Biden phoned members of George Floyd's family after the verdicts were read. NPR's Juana Summers says Biden campaigned on racial justice issues.
The killing of George Floyd changed the shape of the presidential campaign and prompted Biden to make calls for racial equity and an overhaul of the criminal justice system, a more central element of his message, and voters elected him and Vice President Harris. But so far in the first few months of his term, we have not seen a concerted push on police reform. Now, the president supports congressional legislation named for Floyd that would overhaul policing. He talked about that yesterday, but that bill has been stalled in the Senate.
NPR's Juana Summers reporting. President Biden will speak about COVID-19 vaccinations later today. He's expected to say the U.S. is close to his goal of providing 200 million vaccine doses in his first 100 days in office.
That was the Win FM Headline News. The Win FM Headline News was brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, The Grange, KDP Enterprises, Carib Brewery, and Development Bank.
We are faced with tough decisions every day, but choosing the right home or motor insurance shouldn't be one. You need fast claim settlement from a company that's been rooted for over 31 years. And don't forget the A Excellent rating by AM Best. Make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Reliable insurance that you can count on. Get a quote today for your home, motor, contents, and liability insurance needs, and make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance. Tomorrow secured. Local agents, Dalil Walwyn & Co. Limited. Telephone 465-2631 or 469-5303 for the Nevis office.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Everyone struggles at times. Even we too have our own struggles. Do you have a loan at the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis and have fallen behind on your payments because of financial difficulties? Have your financial situation changed? If your answer is yes, visit the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis or call 465-2288, extension 1101 or 469-5416 to make an appointment to discuss our debt evaluation and restructuring plan with one of our qualified officers. We are committed to working with you to make a sustained positive difference in your life.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet.
Different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Everything's gotta go. Horsford's Automotive, everything gotta go. Clearance sale is happening now. All 2018, 2019, and 2020 models gotta go. Yes. Come to Horsford's Automotive and get $10,000 off select 2020 models. That's right. Horsford's Automotive is making room for 2021 by offering $10,000 off select 2020 models. And that's not all. Come now and get 0% down payment. No payment until May 2021. $500 in free groceries, free servicing for 1 year, free bill of sale, free tinting, free registration, free accessories, and free licensing. Horsford's Automotive, everything gotta go clearance sale. The biggest clearance sale event of the year. Select 2020 vehicles priced to go. Everything gotta go. Terms and conditions apply. See store for details.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Voices. I am your host today, Kevon Brown. And before we went on the break, we were speaking on the guilty verdict that was returned in the case of Derrick Chauvin, who was found guilty on a count of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. The sentencing to be carried out or to be passed down is expected to happen in 8 weeks. The other 3 officers who were involved and were charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder are expected to have their trials start in August. Now, before the break, we were talking about some of the possible implications or lack thereof of the verdict coming back, and there are persons who are of the view that no actual change will occur or change will be slow. And if you were listening to our news, there was a report in which the Attorney General of the United States of America, Merrick Garland, he announced that a civil investigation would be starting, investigating the Minneapolis policing as it relates to the situation with George Floyd and his death. He made the delineation that it is separate and apart from the criminal investigation that is being done on the federal level. However, what I found interesting was that he also admitted that justice and changes in that system are slow because the injustices or the predilections of the justice system, the criminal justice system in America, are deeply ingrained in the history of the U.S., and so change naturally will be slow because you are changing a culture, you're changing an ideology, and laws that help to reinforce that ideology. We would love to hear your thoughts. Before we left for break, I think there were some people who were trying to call in, but we had a glitch with our phone right before we were about to go to the midday news. But if you do have any thoughts on the Derrick Chauvin verdict and what that might mean or might not mean, please call in. Our numbers are 466-0989, 762-0989, and 662-0989. Now, to provide a different view on this whole situation, Tucker Carlson, a broadcaster for Fox News, in a report, he said that politics played a role in the jury's deliberation process. He made this report, or he made these accusations last night during his show, Tucker Carlson Tonight, and we're going to play a bit of that report now and his views on the whole situation.
So there was a political context around this trial. Politics shouldn't have any effect on any trial. Again, that's antithetical to what justice is. But they did intrude at every level of this case. We'll tell you how. After the verdict, Joe Biden declared that systemic racism is a stain on this country's soul.
A jury in Minnesota found former Minneapolis police officer Derrick Chauvin guilty on all counts in the murder of George Floyd last May. It was a murder in the full light of day, and it ripped the blinders off for the whole world to see the systemic racism the Vice President just referred to. The systemic racism is a stain on our nation's soul. The knee on the neck of justice for Black Americans. Enough of this senseless killings. Today's verdict is a step forward.
Systemic racism, a term that neither Joe Biden nor anyone else who uses it has ever defined with any precision whatsoever. But more striking is Biden's posture. You'd think he'd be excited by this. Just this morning, as the jury was still deliberating, the President of the United States said he was praying for a guilty verdict.
I'm praying the verdict is the right verdict, which is, I think it's overwhelming in my view. I wouldn't say that unless the jury was sequestered now and not hear me say that.
When was the last time a sitting president weighed in on a jury decision before it was made? Answer, never. The White House was asked about this just a few hours later and pretended that Joe Biden hadn't actually said what he actually said.
You're not able to clarify what is overwhelming, the evidence, the case presented by the prosecution?
We're not going to get ahead of the outcome. I expect when there is a verdict, he will have more to say.
The president has talked about the importance of an independent judiciary. Why is it appropriate for him to weigh in on the verdict, even though the jury is secluded?
I don't think he would see it as weighing in on the verdict. He was conveying what many people are feeling across the country.
Yeah, he was just conveying what many people are feeling. He wasn't weighing in as the single most powerful man in the world on a jury verdict that hadn't been reached yet. He didn't say what you saw him say. If that sounds like a familiar defense, it's exactly what Maxine Waters and her defenders throughout Washington are using today after Waters threatened the jury with violence if it didn't find a guilty verdict.
We've got to not only stay in the street, but we've got to fight for justice. But I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that will say guilty, guilty, guilty. I don't know whether it's in the first degree, but as far as I'm concerned, it's first degree murder. Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
So there's a reason police were all over the streets in cities across the country last night, and it's the threat of violence. And Maxine Waters threatened violence before the jury had even begun to consider the facts of the case. That's so far over the line that we read some Democrats were shocked by it, and yet no one condemned it. That includes the president, and it includes the most powerful people in the Democratic Party, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer of Maryland. They came out in support of Maxine Waters. And then state media, literally state media, public broadcasting system, came out today with an explanation at the White House press briefing. Watch this propagandist explain what Maxine Waters really meant.
Representative Waters, as you said, clarified. She said, my actual words don't matter. I wonder why the White House isn't also coming to the defense of Representative Waters, given the fact that she's now facing an onslaught of attacks, especially by, I would say, Republicans. I wonder why the White House isn't saying, we back what she said about being confrontational. She was obviously not threatening violence. There are civil rights leaders that are saying that's what civil rights is to be confrontational, to be active.
Well, she also clarified her own remarks, Amish, and I think that's the most powerful piece to point to.
That lady works for you. She literally works for public television, and there she is ardently flacking for lunatic Maxine Waters at the White House press briefing. Oh, it's all normal. Don't worry. It's always been this way. It hasn't always been this way. And our leaders haven't always talked like they're seized by religious fervor. Here was the Speaker of the House today thanking George Floyd because he died in order to make the Democratic Party more powerful. For his sacrifice, she said. Watch this.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice. Because of you and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous with justice. Unless we can change the law, this will be an episode. We change the law, we're going down a different path altogether.
So the guy dies on the sidewalk, and here this lady comes out and politicizes it so completely that he becomes sort of Democratic Party saint. Thank you for your sacrifice. This is grotesque. It's a cult, obviously.
That was Tucker Carlson from his show, Tucker Carlson Tonight, from his last night broadcast on his views on the verdict of the Derrick Chauvin case. And in that report, you heard that he suggested that the trial and the verdict was very much politicized. He went on to say that Maxine Waters, U.S. Representative for California, she threatened violence and incited violence against the jury if they didn't bring back a guilty verdict. And then he also went on to speak about the martyrdom of George Floyd's death. Now, the reason I played that is because, one, it provides a different view of the verdict and what it means, or the reactions, or whatever implications it might have on the judiciary and the criminal justice system. But he had some points, and I want to get into those points. But before I go into those points, I think we have a caller. Caller, you're live on Voices. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, I call again.
Yes.
Yeah. I just called to clarify something.
Mm-hmm.
I think you did your own analysis of what the caller, which was me,
yes,
said certain things. I think you mentioned that I said that change will come once they have, or after they have a civil war. No, I never said that, nor did I suggested or implied that. What I'm saying is that all of what you are seeing here, the killings of black people, it is not going to stop, because apparently there are preparations that have been made, okay? And all of these preparations are done to have an outright war enraged on the black people. That's why you see they're not easing up. So they're doing all of these things and so on just to rile them up to a point where they will come, where black people will start to attacking, whether in kind or as the case may be, so that they can wage that war. And you know, I know, and many people know, the strength of the white man is his what they call it, his weapons. Okay? Everybody knows that. He is boastful, and he can be so upfront with what they do because of their military might, their weapons, their acts of terrorism and death. Now, if there is a civil war, there's no way black people are going to win. Black people are practically defenseless. They have nothing to fight back with. And that is why even when they talk about the law where that gives the American citizen the right to bear arms, it doesn't refer to black people. That's why you see they disarm them. And even some of these black men and black women who go overseas to fight the American war, when they come back, that's the first thing they do, take away the arms, the guns that they have. Okay, I'm not saying in all cases they are successful, maybe one or two still, but that's their move to disarm them. Okay, because the killing, they don't want to be killed themselves, right? They don't want to be killed. And in terms of the black people, when you talk about even the Caucasians, they are not from America, so to speak, right? No, it's not a matter of who is from there or not. What I meant is these black Americans, they are the descendants of the people who are enslaved and brought over to America. These descendants, they cannot be deported. So they see these descendants as a problem to what they call the American society or the American dream. Okay? They do not want black people there. This has nothing to do with whether the white people were born there or not, because we know they are not from there. They are not from there either. This is not the issue. The fact of the matter is right now here, they are the ones who control the system and that land. They, the Europeans, are the ones who are in control. And in their eyes, the black people is a problem. They are a threat and where they are concerned, there must be a final solution to that, what they refer to as the black problem.
So,
and
caller,
that's why the purge, in a way, has already started.
before you
And
go on,
like
though,
I said, it will. Hello?
yeah, I just wanted to ask a question though, because as you're suggesting, you said that there seems to be a setup to incite some violent reaction from the black population, so that, and you also suggested that because of the military might, black people stand absolutely no chance in winning if there is a civil war, but that would still bring about change, no?
No, I didn't say it's going to bring about change. It will not bring about any change. How are we going to be able to bring about change?
Because then, if what you're suggesting happens and the white man wins because the black man doesn't have the military might, then the white man would have changed the landscape of America, essentially getting rid of the black populace that they deem unworthy of being there. That is still a change, in my opinion.
That's not the kind of change that I understood it to be. I thought I was looking in terms of constitutional changes and, that legislative type change.
Well, when I spoke about change, I meant any form of change, whether it be in favor of the black community or in favor of the white community.
Okay, all right. But
yes.
I was looking at it from, because what black people are fighting for all the time is what they call equality. Right?
Right.
And maybe it's not so much equality, but equity, whatever that is. So I was looking at it from along that line. That is where I was looking at it from. But I think, I don't know, I think what is happening up there, it is for us to learn, because it's their turn today, tomorrow down here. It's going to be our turn, because the way you see the CVI going, eventually, that is what is going to happen. That's my belief. I don't want anybody to take what I say. This is how I see it. This is how I feel strongly about it. In time to come, this is what it's going to end up being. Anyways, I'll continue to listen.
All right. Thank you, caller, for your contribution to the discussion, and it's interesting contribution. It's a very necessary contribution, because at times I feel some people, because they might have a differing opinion, are often feel that they should be silent and not voice that opinion, even if it goes against the status quo, even if it goes against the beliefs of even the people within your own community. It's necessary for us to have this discourse, because without discourse, people can't really learn from anything. We can't learn from each other. We can't learn from history to better inform the present and the future. So these discussions, where even there is a difference of opinion, they are absolutely necessary. And speaking of a difference of opinion, while Tucker Carlson's delivery, in my opinion, was a bit of his view on the verdict as being politicized, and Maxine Waters threatening violence if the jury didn't bring back a guilty verdict. He did bring up a point, or a point was brought up in his report about martyrdom and about sacrifice. And it's often been my view in any one of these situations, for the talk of change to start, for some reason, blood has to be spilled. There has to be a sacrifice. Now, I am not certain that George Floyd was born or died for the purpose of being a sacrifice. He was a man. He had a life. He had a family. He had dreams, goals, aspirations. And for him to be then made into a sacrifice for a movement seems to be neglecting or shifting the actual purpose that his life would have or should have been to something that forces, that informs an agenda. I believe that criminal justice change in America should happen, because it is very obvious that it is a systematic situation in which black people and persons of color are continually what is the word that I'm looking for? They're continually targeted unfairly because of the criminal justice system. However, George Floyd should not be used, or any one of the many black individuals that died from police brutality, they should not be used for an agenda. It is quite an unfortunate thing. That is one thing that I have to say as a person. This is my opinion. Their death should not be used to push an agenda, because they were alive. They were alive. They had family. They have families that miss them. They have families that are still mourning their deaths, even a year, almost a year after his passing. The pain doesn't go away. Money doesn't make the pain go away. Reform isn't necessarily going to make the pain go away. So instead of calling him a sacrifice to push an agenda, please remember the man. Remember the man, remember who he was. We have a caller. Caller, you're live on Voices. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Concerning what his name is, Floyd verdict. I think one of the things we need to look at locally is whether our law enforcement officers use such incidents to learn. I raise that because a few weeks ago, a video circulated with a police officer standing foot on somebody's back while the guy was lying down in the drain. So my thing is, I hope somehow our officers, law enforcement officers, learn from these developments. It's not just about America, it's about how we treat people in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution. And you are correct. It is how we treat people. And you, as well as the caller who called previously, raised a point where there might be some trickle-down effect because of the situation that happened in George Floyd's situation. The caller before, she mentioned that, in her opinion, she feels that there might be a situation in the future where, because of migration, the populace or the power, the power within St. Kitts and Nevis will shift from the natives to the persons that migrate from outside. And our caller who just called, he mentioned that police officers should use what happened in the States as a learning opportunity, as some form of reminder that we are human and we should be treated as human. And I'm sure in police training, there are ways that you can apprehend and restrain a person without necessarily having to stand in their back or kneel on their neck. I don't think I'd be speaking out of turn in saying that there are safer ways to disarm and restrain a person than to be that violent, almost forgetting that people are human. But before we continue, we will take a short break to hear a word from our sponsors, and we will be back to continue the discussion.
It's April Tools Month again at Horsford's Building Center on St. Kitts and Nevis. Don't miss out on the year's best time to buy tools. Get 25% off on selected tools store-wide. Hundreds of tools on sale, slash by 25%. 25% off on tools for this April Tools Month at Horsford's Building Center on St. Kitts and Nevis. The promotion ends April 30th. Horsford's Building Center, the Federation's favorite home improvement store. Some exclusions apply. See stores for details. Everything's gotta go. Horsford's Automotive Everything Gotta Go clearance sale is happening now. All 2018, 2019, and 2020 models gotta go. Yes! Come to Horsford's Automotive and get $10,000 off select 2020 models. That's right. Horsford's Automotive is making room for 2021 by offering $10,000 off select 2020 models. And that's not all. Come now and get 0% down payment. No payment until May 2021. $500 in free groceries, free servicing for 1 year, free bill of sale, free tinting, free registration, free accessories, and free licensing. Horsford's Automotive Everything Gotta Go clearance sale. The biggest clearance sale event of the year. Select 2020 vehicles priced to go. Everything gotta go. Terms and conditions apply. See store for details.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Voices. I am your host, Kevon Brown, and before our break, our very short break, as we heard from our sponsors, we were speaking about the verdict that was passed down to Derrick Chauvin in relation to his murdering of George Floyd. He was charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. And we had some interesting reports and discussion on that matter. But we're going to shift gears a little bit and focus on our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As I'm sure you are all aware, as we are all aware, the volcano in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, specifically in the north side of St. Vincent, La Soufrière, started explosively erupting. We should make that differentiation there. Explosively erupting on April 9th and continued, and I think the last eruption was on Sunday. The last explosive eruption was on Sunday, April 17th. And according to geologist Dr. Richard Robertson from the University of the West Indies Seismic Research Center, the explosive eruptions could last weeks, even months, and I think at most he said it could continue for a full year. As observed by the effusive eruptions, the brevity with which, or the length with which these explosions can continue, we observed it with the effusive eruptions that were discovered on La Soufrière in December. Erupting volcanoes are not a one-and-done situation. It's a continuous situation. Now, the effusive eruptions, that's when magma comes out and there's magma flow. Sometimes there's magma flow. However, it was reported that the magma, the lava at La Soufrière is a bit goopier or viscous. So its ability to flow isn't as easy as, let's say, what happened, the volcanic eruption in Iceland, or as is noted in Hawaii. So it formed a new dome. So it continued the effusive eruption, building that new dome from the basaltic rock and magma that was coming out of it. Of course, there was gas that was coming out of it as well. But then on April 9th, it had its first explosive eruption, which blanketed St. Vincent in ash, also neighboring Barbados because of the wind trajectory. Barbados was effectively blanketed in ash and had to go on a whole national cleaning drive that shut them down for, I think, a day or two to get the ash under control, because if it rained and the ash was on roofs or on specific structures, the weight and heft of the ash could have damaged the structures. So national cleaning efforts in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and in Barbados had to be enacted to save some properties from being destroyed. Some 20,000 people were displaced in various shelters. Some were evacuated to neighboring islands, specifically those who were living in the red and orange zones that would have been fall and possibly pyroclastic density currents. That's hot ash streaming down the mountain. Very dangerous situation that negatively affects, not only destroys the foliage, the structures, but also destroys foliage, deathly to animals. Any form of life, honestly, is basically dead under the effects of a pyroclastic density currents, that hot, fast, expedient flow of ash and magma and lava bits and debris from the mountain. In response, however, as we do, the regional heads came together and started mobilizing aid, whether it was through water and other hygiene type supplies, food. The support was also financial. St. Kitts Nevis here sent $1 million to SVG, and I think it was also announced that $20,000 was donated to SEDEMA in helping the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, the United Nations yesterday said it will launch a US $29.2 million global funding appeal to help the affected people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Outside of the UN, the Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS, Dr. Didicus Jules, he pledged support with the United Nations and the global community in supporting the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And the OECS launched their Stronger Together campaign in an effort to help the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And the aim of that campaign is to raise US $100,000 in funding to help support and to help, I guess, restart the Vincentians who were negatively affected by the volcanic eruptions that are still continuing and could continue for a while. But we're gonna get a clip from Dr. Didicus Jules speaking about the Stronger Together campaign.
Our support and collaboration with the UN system in its effort to rally the global community in embracing the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in this hour of need. The OECS Stronger Together campaign is designed to achieve several critical objectives in response to the humanitarian situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The first is to execute the decisions of the OECS authority in relation to an OECS-wide response to this situation. The second is to provide as much diplomatic, material, and financial support needed by the principal disaster response agencies managing this crisis, and that is SEDEMA, the seismic unit of the University of the West Indies, the Regional Security System, and CAFA. And it is important that we not overlook the importance of CAFA in this compounded situation of volcanic eruption in a time of COVID. To establish also a coalition of private sector philanthropic foundations and other sources of financial, material, and technical assistance to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and in so doing, to bring to this circle of solidarity new sources of support that may not have been previously available. This coalition has already been established with 150 agencies and has had prior experience led by the Global Leadership Forum, Nigel Salina, have had previous experiences in dealing with hurricane situations in Louisiana with Katrina, in Dominica, with Maria, and with Dorian in the Bahamas.
No, that was Dr. Didicus Jules, Director General of the OECS, speaking about the Stronger Together campaign. And their final aim is to raise $100 million US. I think I said 100,000 previously. It's not 100,000, it's $100 million. $100 million US to help the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in dealing with the after effects, the disastrous after effects of the continued eruption of La Soufrière. He also spoke about, within the clip, he spoke about the compounding issues, and there are several compounding issues that are happening concurrently with each other. We are about, I think, 5 or less weeks away from the start of the hurricane season. La Soufrière is continuing its eruptions. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, and one of the most talked about efforts globally is the effect of climate change that is affecting the hurricane seasons, the length of the hurricane seasons, the activity rate, and the strength of the hurricanes. He also highlighted a possible revenue stream that speaks towards a combination of plastics and of the ash. Now, the reason why he brought up plastics is because one of the most wanted resources in St. Vincent and the Grenadines currently is water, because there is an effect on the water supply in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But most people, because of no other choice, actually, they're sending the water in plastic bottles. And as we know, regionally and locally, there is a push to reduce the amount of single-use plastics that we currently use within St. Kitts and Nevis and in the region. And Dr. Jules highlighted the possibility of recycling those plastic bottles in combination with the ash, using the natural occurrence of that ash fall from the La Soufrière volcano to be a possible revenue stream. And the possible revenue stream, I think he dubbed it Ash for Cash. And we're going to have him talk a little bit about what Ash for Cash is, what that revenue stream could possibly help the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and maybe even the region.
Allow me in ending to just provide 2 quick examples of the type of response that we consider to be a perfect marriage of the immediate and the strategic. So we have had, since the eruption, an explosion of millions of tons of ash, as well as a growing problem of plastic that has been occasioned by the disaster, because water is, as we've heard, is a critical need, and a lot of water is being shipped into St. Vincent in small containers, in drinking bottles, and so on. So we are concerned that while we are responding to the needs of water and thirst in the country, that we're not also solving that problem by creating a plastic pollution problem. And the OECS has had several initiatives relating to plastic reduction that we are now going to be rolling out in a much expanded manner in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But we've also been encouraging the member states of the OECS in sending water to St. Vincent to do so by barge. And we have the support of French private entrepreneurs with a barge capable of moving 50 40-foot containers. And we've been using this not only to collect items in containers across the OECS, but also to move water in bulk and moving also water tanks for delivery, thus reducing the tendency for increased inflows of plastic bottled water. We also have the opportunity of turning ash to cash. And in discussions held with the government of Norway, who have been very responsive, they have pointed us to an experience in the Pacific where ash together with recycled plastic is being used to create bricks for construction. So we think that we are exploring this and in active discussions with them. on moving into St. Vincent with the possibility, as well as we've invited the government of Barbados, who have been seriously collaterally impacted by the eruption, to be part of this initiative of moving ash to cash.
That was Dr. Didicus Jules speaking on some efforts to help St. Vincent and the Grenadines, especially to create a new revenue stream when they get on their feet. The Ash for Cash initiative, combining recycled plastics and ash to create bricks. How likely that initiative will come toward fruition, we will have to see, but it is a very ingenious and innovative way of using the fallout from a natural disaster to possibly create a revenue stream for the islands affected by the volcanic eruption of La Soufrière. Now, in an update from yesterday, April 20th, Dr. Robertson from the UESRC, the Seismic Research Center, he said that even though, because it's been reported that the timing between explosive eruptions has lengthened, and I think the length of time between explosive eruption has increased to some 40. Before the last eruption on Sunday, the time between that and the previous eruption was 41 hours. Now, he's saying that even though the time between the eruptions is increasing, the dangers of the volcanic activity are still very much prevalent. They're still very much there. So people shouldn't view the lulls as an end of the volcanic activity, because St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the area of the volcano are still experiencing tremors and tectonic activity. So the volcanic is still very much active and still very much building up, even though he said that a dome seems to be, the activity seems to indicate that a new dome might start to form again. He definitely says, though, that the lull does not indicate a stopping of the activity. And we'll hear a bit from him as to why the lulls don't indicate the activity being stopped.
Time period is increasing. There's some element of a sort of a pattern we don't quite get handle on. But essentially, the main thing is that the gap in between the explosive events and the sort of the relatively quiet periods is increasing. So it went from 13 to 40 something to 50 something. So yeah, and it probably will get to 70 and 80. We're not quite sure if there's a rate or special relationship with how fast the gap is increasing, but we know that the gap is increasing. That's why I said there's a potential for it. But I also said that there is also potential that it might not happen, that this time the dome might be successful in being formed, in which case the chances of it capping the system, at least for a longer time, would be there. And you might, instead of having the explosion, you might have validation that you actually have a dome there. And then it may take a little bit longer because then it has more material to get out of the way if it's going to go explosive.
Professor, I ask that because I think we have to reinforce the point that whenever there's a lull, it does not mean that activities somehow have come to an end. And therefore it is important that persons stay away from the danger zone, because persons are always tempted to return home for whatever reasons. And we can see what could happen if during one of those so-called lulls, you went back to the danger zone and then there's an eruption.
Right. I agree with you completely. And I think the first thing I'd say is that the volcano hasn't stopped erupting yet. And that everywhere in the red zone is extremely dangerous, even during these lulls, because we don't know how long the lulls are going to be. The pattern seems to be like that now, but the volcano has shown that it can change its pattern within minutes without any other indication. Once volcanoes are erupting as they are now, and once they've shown that they have a potential to be explosive and could be dangerously and violently explosive as this one has shown, it really makes sense for you to stay away from them. even if it looks now like there are periods when there's very little happening. Because, as I said again, even though it looks like it's increasing and that, as I said, the chances of something happening is within a certain time frame, that is with the current pattern. The pattern could change by before I finish speaking, and then it suddenly could, you have a different thing. So that's why it's particularly, because of the what we call the uncertainty. There's a certain element that we know that, but there's a lot happening at the volcano that we don't quite understand or know, and therefore we give as best we can projections about what could happen, but we can't be absolutely certain. And in that regard, it means therefore that people need to be very careful, need to be conscious that red is still dangerous, and that the fact that you have this apparent periods when you have quiescence or it not doing very much, it doesn't mean, at least at the surface, it's not doing very much on the surface, but we have another shaking going on. That's what we have in the earthquakes. So it's doing a lot. It's trying to get out, and we don't know exactly when it will get out, even though it looks like it has a pattern. So don't be, I agree with you, don't be fooled.
That was Dr. Richard Robertson, geologist with the University of the West Indies Seismic Research Center, on the lull, the time between explosive eruptions of the La Soufrière, and he was emphasizing that just because the activity seems to be, the activity of explosive eruptions seems to be increasing between eruptions, it does not signify an end of activity. It does not signify that the situation cannot change at the drop of a hat, and it does not signify that the red zone is any less dangerous than it is during an eruption, because it could erupt at any point in time. He clarified and said specifically that he has not said that the activity has stopped. It is still very much erupting, so the situation is still very much dynamic. A word that became very much a part of the vernacular. But the situation is very much dynamic in St. Vincent and the Grenadines because of the La Soufrière eruptions. So that was just a bit of an update on what's going on with SVG, the efforts to provide help, the fact that the volcanic eruptions are ongoing, and currently there is no estimated time as to when specifically the eruptions will end, how it will end. So our thoughts and prayers are with the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we're hoping for a safe return to, I wouldn't say normal, because there is no such thing as normal, life continually changes, but a safe return to some semblance of functioning life. That, I think, brings us to the end of today's edition of Voices. Thank you so much for listening. Today was a very good discussion. I think we had a very good discussion as we discussed the verdict from Derrick Chauvin. He was found guilty on 3 counts, and his sentencing is expected in 8 weeks. And we got some differing opinions on what that verdict means as it pertains to criminal justice reform in the United States of America. And we also spoke about a situation that is much closer to home, and I think much more poignant and relevant to us. And I want to thank you for listening and look forward to another edition of Voices. Please stay tuned for more from WinFM 98.9. I was your host, Kevon Brown.
Tools month again at Horsford's Building Center on St. Nevis. Don't miss out on the year's best time to buy tools. Get 25% off on selected tools store-wide. Hundreds of tools on sale, slash by 25%. 25% off on tools for this April Tools month at Horsford's Building Center on St. Nevis. The promotion ends April 30th. Horsford's Building Center, the Federation's favorite home improvement